Are we on? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay, welcome to the Policy Committee meeting for May 17th, 2016. Are we properly posted, Lynn? We are properly posted. This is kind of like the athletic teams where we are reconstructing our team. So we have four new members, and Barbara, who's been on it for, well,
Years.
years. Well, good. We'll be looking for your
Oh, yeah, wisdom.
wisdom, yes. No citizens here to address us tonight, and you're going to be visiting us on another topic. Okay. We have several action items, and then before we leave, we will be discussing at probably at some length just where we are with the Neola policy and how that all fits together with our work over the next couple months. But let's first get approval for the policy minutes for February meeting. This is kind of interesting because none of us were at that meeting except for you, Barbara.
I'll move to accept.
Are they
the
accurate?
minutes. Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. Is there a
I'll
second?
trust you on that and second that, Barb.
Further discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Opposed? 5-0. Then we have a action item for the revision of policy 8343, which is the, which is the preparation of the board agenda. And we have, I believe, two adjustments we're planning to make, right? Joe?
If you look at page 2, lines 17 and 19, they've been updated to reflect the correct titles of those agenda items. So page 2, which would actually be the page 3, if you were just including the cover page, in red underlined, you'll see communications / WEF report under item general business item H, and then under general business item J, charter school and program liaison program report. So again, this is to address some corrections and additions to our board agendas, regularly scheduled monthly meetings.
Okay, and the WEF report would be what Barbara has been doing as a communication item anyway with the Education Foundation.
Yes.
And really, if you look at J, the way it is slightly worded differently, it's charter, comma, and then schools, so it's not just charter school as I've been directed. That's the way we were supposed to report it. So now we're going to be able to talk about charter schools, and other programs.
If you go to the last page
Yeah.
of this, there is
You
a
can see it.
cleaned, updated agenda template for us to use.
Yes, Barbara?
What does it mean, program report? I know you give charter.
Well, that
you
would
give
be if,
charters.
when I've tried to talk about, for instance, the bilingual dual language program, so
Okay.
it's something specific to a program.
Okay, all right.
And previous to now, or doing this, that really wouldn't have fit properly in with a charter school report.
Right, okay.
So we wanted to just make it clear we can do that now. Joe?
Yeah, it's just a cleanup item. I think it's appropriate that we should hear about programs and other items besides our charter schools, because we have great things going on at all of our schools, and sometimes programs hit across schools. So I know this is just cleanup, but I think it really is a good piece of work to clean this up. And I would really like during the meetings to hear about all those things, not just charter schools. So
Thank you. Barbara?
Bill, I just personally would, as an old school board member, would like to thank you for always keeping us updated every month on every charter school and every magnet school. It's an excellent report, because we really didn't have all that information before. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate it.
Thank you for saying that. Appreciate it, too. It's been kind of very refreshing and rewarding.
Yeah, it certainly has been. We're proud of that stuff.
Okay. This is an action item, Joe.
I move to approve the changes as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Greg. Further questions or discussion on the change to the revision of board policy 8343? None, then I think we'll take a roll call on this, Lynn.
Okay.
Call the names.
Oh, We've never done that
We
before.
didn't- we've never
here at
done
the
that?
committee. No, it's all those in favor.
Well, then I'll just do all in favor. Please say
Yeah.
aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's easy.
Thank you.
Gee, I was going to test you. Okay,
Before we move on, did you want to, this item will go to the June full board meeting for a first reading, and then July for approval?
oh, that's right. Is that what, we decide that here? Yeah, we would,
We just need to discuss it.
we have to, okay, we need to decide where to take, when to take it to the board. And we could take it to the board, well, in June. And Lynn and I had talked about whether we could do this on one reading, and it really doesn't matter now because we're going to be into the month of June anyway, right? So-
Correct.
So the typical way of doing it is first reading in June and approval in July.
Correct.
That would seem appropriate.
Our policy on policy approval is a 2 full board meeting requirement unless it is waived.
Yes.
And I would stick with that.
Yeah.
You know, the only times we waive that is if there is something that really requires us to
Deadline,
expedite that. But I would prefer to just have the time to think about it, although this seems pretty maybe straightforward and a small change. You never know when another school board member who's not a member of this committee would like a little bit more time to absorb it. They don't hear necessarily all the discussion that we have in committee, and I just think that's the best way to go about doing it, unless there's a reason to expedite
Well,
it.
we can leave it that way, Lynn.
Thank you.
Okay. That would be, let me get a pen out here, so. Third action item then is the potential new policy. And this is to create a policy, which we have in here, on the Wisconsin Seal of Biliteracy and Global Education Achievement Certificate.
And with us this evening, we have Dee Garcia, who, through some of her own work and work with her team, worked Seal of Biliteracy in Waukesha, as was presented, I believe, 2 months ago at this. Last month at the CNI committee, so.
And in earlier communications today, we thought might be good for a little review from Dee about what this is about, because I don't know that either Greg or Amanda had any inkling on this, unless you heard about it. It came up at CNI, it's not been at the full board
Right.
as a, to share this. So we're going to have Dee give us, and Joe, I don't even know if you know about this one.
I was aware of it,
You were nosy enough
but
to
not all
find
the
out.
details.
Okay, good. So a little bit of a refresher so you can understand why we think this is a good idea. Dee?
Hey, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. How are you?
Good?
Great. The Seal of Biliteracy and the Global Education Achievement Certificate are 2 pathways to be able to certify that our students are both globally competent and/or globally competent and highly proficient in 2 or more languages. We will join as a district 64 other schools in Wisconsin who offer the Global Education Achievement Certificate. However, we are the first district that will offer the Seal of Biliteracy. The Seal of Biliteracy is a statewide certification. There are 16 states that have state legislation awarding students these awards. Wisconsin is not pursuing a legislative route, and for that reason, I do want to pursue a school board policy route. So I'd like to just back it up a little bit and share with you how these 2 awards came about. There's been significant change, obviously, in the U.S. State Department over the past 10, 15 years with regards to preparation of our young students to become the professionals that we're going to need in the future. They have partnered with the Council of Chief Schools, as well as the Partnerships for 21st Century Learning and a variety of other organizations, both at the university and private sector, to identify competencies that are needed for our future graduates to be able to enter the workforce. Out of those kind of consortiums and collaborations, the Global Education Achievement Certificate was created. The Global Ed Achievement Certificate is an award that has students meet certain competencies, which do include participation in a world language, although not mastery, as well as 4 other types of exposures, either through world geography, global economics, some science, environmental science courses will count. The Global Achievement Certificate is basically an award that says a student has completed a certain amount of coursework in this area, which demonstrates a potential for global competency. We have upped the ante a little bit here at the School District of Waukesha, in that we've created 4 different rubrics that students will be using as they go through the Global Education Achievement process, and they will be assembling a portfolio of evidence about how they have been able to recognize their own and others' perspectives, that they're able to communicate effectively to diverse audiences. There is a service learning component part of this, as well as investigating the world. So there's inquiry-based learning. All of this learning is not separate to the coursework that they have in the classes. In fact, it's very much embedded in part of it and is dependent upon the ongoing development of student choice and voice in what they learn, how they learn, and how they show it. The Seal of Biliteracy is a little bit different than the Global Education Achievement Certificate because it doesn't require a student to complete seat time. It is meant to award a student a seal that recognizes their mastery in low incidence languages as well as partner languages, including partner languages of English. It is an award that can be awarded to a student who becomes proficient in American Sign Language, Braille, Greek, Latin, Ojibwe, Spanish, English, French, Latin. It's very, very vast. For some of our more typical languages taught in a K-12 curriculum, those students will be pursuing a route of either taking an SAT or an advanced placement assessment in which they have to meet certain criteria to be able to receive the award. Students also need to meet criteria if they're native English speakers in the English language, and if they're developing English, they have to meet criteria for developing English as a partner language. As I mentioned, some of the same criteria with the Global Ed Achievement Certificate are also part of the Seal of Biliteracy. Students do have to, through the choice of their coursework, demonstrate that they are effective communicators. They do need to investigate the world. They do need to recognize their own and others' perspectives. And then finally, they need to be able to take action. So there's a service learning component. We're invested in the ACP process, or the college and career planning process, to get students involved in looking at careers that might take them into the global marketplace, both within the county, outside of the county, and the state, and of course throughout the country and abroad. We feel that this inherently provides the support to students to be able to achieve another benchmark in our district. 2 of them actually. First is participation in advanced placement coursework, and the second is being able to achieve the opportunity of taking a course through eAchieve for graduation. So that's a little bit of the history thus far of where we're at. I was on a committee for the past 3 years developing the Seal of Biliteracy at the state level. We did present it to Tony Evers at the end of November this past 2015, and then as soon as it became available for us to apply for, we were very aggressive and assertive in applying for it. And the criteria has kind of been set and established over the work that I've had with the state and in conjunction with Mr. Gerhard Fisher, who is a DPI World Languages coordinator. And we are kind of ready to go. We've got criteria down, and we're hoping just to bring it through CNI and policy and establish a real pathway for students. I didn't mention, but I will mention that this is an award. Both of these awards are awardable to students who are completing the 12th grade, which basically means that students need to have a pathway from the time they enter school to develop the steps it takes to develop global competency. A student can enter into both of these awards really at any time, including as a 10th, 11th grader, it doesn't matter. But we are very, very interested in providing a pathway for students as young as 4-year-old kindergarten whose parents and community are making specific choices about their education and how they become educated to support their global competency. So we will be assembling a group in the fall. This focus group will be working on how to get the logistics moving for both the pathway development and how it looks at K4, the 5K through 5th grade range, 6 through 8, et cetera. And we're hoping that we will have stakeholders from all of our schools that will be able to empower staff to build knowledge and to build community understanding about the benefits of this. One of the things that we should know is that the Seal of Biliteracy is transferable across states, and its identified criteria is recognized by 16 other states. This would be incredibly powerful for a student who is applying for competitive scholarships, awards, grants, or even employment. So that's the history.
Just another refreshing point. You brought this to CNI.
Yeah.
Was it an approval item, or was that just an information item? I don't.
Just an information item.
Okay, so we didn't do any take any action at CNI on this.
I don't know that we had to take action
Right.
on this necessarily, which is why we brought it through policy for
Okay, and
action.
that really leads to the question then, what's the advantage to having this as a policy?
The advantage to having this as a policy, as other policies, is that parents would have some recourse to be able to help support us, to be able to support the development of the pathway for their kids and the development of a vision for this kind of learning at the K-12 level.
Thank you. Barbara?
Dee, are we going to award this starting next year?
The hope is to be able to award it for the graduating class of 2016-17.
Next year?
Yep.
Okay. And then who's going to determine if the student is eligible?
Okay, so at this point, there's some variability in this. The Global Education Achievement Certificate up until this year has required that students send criteria into the state of Wisconsin. However, given the fact that there are now 64 schools and potentially hundreds of students applying for this, the committee that they had looking at the criteria, it no longer is sufficient. So what is happening is each district is having to set up their criteria and have their criteria submitted to the state of Wisconsin, who then certifies, in fact, that you can, as an educational organization or agency, certify that a student has achieved this. We then would have to create an embossment on a diploma as well as language on a transcript stating that this is the case. Of course, I would have greater ideas about that, which would include a more public celebration of this achievement, but minimally that's what's required.
So does it look like it'll be at the school level, at the high school level? Or will you be involved in determining if the student qualifies?
I will be involved in probably bringing the group together on what
Okay,
qualifications
good.
to look for, but really, like many things in the school district of Waukesha, we're putting the keys into the hands of the student.
Okay.
The criteria is going to be very explicitly laid out. It is the student's role and responsibility to make a connection with someone that they deem to be an advisor. This could be their soccer coach, it could be their pastor, it could be whoever they choose, that they check in with regularly. It's an informal relationship, and it's just meant to keep the student on pace. Through our Infinite Campus system, we will be able to flag students who have submitted what we would call interest in participation, so that their guidance counselor sees them flagged and knows to have the conversation to make sure that they are meeting the requirements with their courses for GEAC, and for GEAC is the acronym for the Global Ed Achievement Certificate, and as well as their AP requirements for the Seal of Biliteracy.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Yes,
good.
Yeah.
Will, oh, I know. I'm assuming that the criteria is currently under construction.
The criteria is actually created because the state has set out like a skeleton of
Okay.
actually what's required to be able
Okay.
to allow us to certify our students, but they are definitely open for negotiation and flexibility
Okay.
as we engage in the process in the fall.
So would we then inform kids that are in middle school about this goal that they might strive for when they take foreign language?
Yes, and in fact, part of my role as the director of the Bilingual ESL and World Languages Department, I do a lot of that work already, except that the work that I'm doing is very focused on the dual language student
Sure.
because we're able to offer an accelerated pathway for those students. But yes, I think that even the parent information will start as young as potentially at the 4K level. We have many students that are coming into, as you know,
Yeah, that's right.
either dual language or even the potential that we build IB programs in the district. Their parents are going to want to know what could the path look like. So we're hoping to be able to lay the path out, at least a vision of what that could be and what the competencies kind of could look like. There's a lot to be developed at the grassroots level still.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? Yes, Joe?
Thank you, Bill. I'm going to turn to the policy now. I have a couple suggestions for our consideration. Under the designation of scholars, item number 1, we talk about this being done on a timely basis. Sometimes it's nice to have wiggle room, but other times I think it would be nice to be a little bit more specific. I'm thinking that we might want to have a time put in there, whether it's at the end of the first semester of the senior year, maybe the end of the junior year. I'm not sure exactly how much time it's going to take to kick up to the state and get their approval. But we should probably consider that. And And along the same lines, under additional procedures, we talk about the district designee will. I think we should put a step in prior to that in saying that this person, the designee for the district, will be appointed by the superintendent. You're the designee, right?
I am.
So I think we should give the authority to the superintendent to appoint whomever he or she wants. Just a couple items potentially for clarity.
Okay. Just to clarify for you all too, students do not have to submit anything to the state. We are like the certifying agency, and we are the awarding agency. So what they have to do is submit to us.
So would you have an idea of when you would want that submitted by? You know, and that might be different. Maybe your first year, you're only going to have a few, and it might be pretty quick to process, or it might take a long time to process because it is the first few that are coming in. But do you have an idea of what?
Well,
you'd
I
want
can
that
tell
timing
you
to
from the
be?
experience, California has thousands of students that do this, and they started out like us with just a few trickling in. Typically, what I'm hearing from both California and from my colleagues in New Mexico is that they start in April, and they consistently review applications April through June. I'm not sure if that is going to be in line with some of the things that we need to accomplish here in the district, so we will definitely have to determine that as a collegial group in the fall about what seems most appropriate. The other thing we need to consider is that lots of times AP test results may not be available in that time frame. So we may have to also have an opportunity for students to come back to us after June of their graduating senior year to be able to demonstrate some of the criteria so that we can amend their transcript.
So there's some trickiness maybe to the timing there.
The on a timely basis is really just to show that they are interested in pursuing this. It wouldn't need the AP exam scores at that point.
No, timely basis just means any time that you're in high school and you're deciding this is what you want to do.
But Joe's point is we maybe should set a limit, like they can't do it on June 1st,
Of their senior year.
their senior year.
They could do it on June 1st of their senior year if that's when they determined that they had all the credits. I'm just thinking of a transferring student, for example, in the second semester of senior year. If they come in and they realize they've had 4 credits of a world language, they have 4 credits of interdisciplinary study, they have work samples that meet the criteria of the rubrics. For some reason they didn't know, no one got to them. Absolutely, I'd say we wouldn't close the door on a student that was in that situation.
Joe?
Could we perhaps put a date on there that would address the majority, and then a clarifier in there that special consideration will be given
Thank you.
on a case-by-case
Yep.
basis?
What would that date, what do you think that date would be?
First semester, end of third quarter?
In order to ensure that students have like the best accessibility, I would say by the end of first quarter, senior year, we'd want to know,
That's like,
like by November of their senior
yeah,
year.
November.
Yeah,
You picked the date and
I picked it.
you picked it, November. And then how would we word the special consideration, Joel?
I would just, so any senior is eligible to earn by submitting notice by November 1 of senior year, or other means as directed by the school district of Waukesha. Special consideration, or consideration will be given to special circumstances based off of transfers into the district. What would be?
Just say special consideration.
Special
consideration.
Don't list them.
considerations.
Yeah, I agree.
We're really hoping that a lot of our students will come into ninth grade and already have an idea that they like to declare a pathway like this.
That's of course the intention. Okay, so we're changing the untimely basis there. I don't, that we also have the same wording. So shall verify each student who has submitted, I don't think we have to say the same thing in item number 2, because we called it that. Okay. And then on item number 4, under additional procedures, you've said that determine the site base designee to coordinate this, as appointed by the superintendent. We just insert those words in there?
Actually, I was thinking the district designee, which is D. I think we need to have above that, so
Where-
the very so where it says additional procedures,
Yes?
I think right under the underline, I think the first statement we should make.
Oh, up there,
Is
okay.
that the the superintendent will appoint a district
That takes care of all four of those.
designee.
Yes.
And then we can say the designee will do these things.
Perhaps to stay consistent with other language, often our policy says the superintendent or his or her.
Right,
Sure,
right.
sure. We'll appoint
That would go
the,
right in at the top item there, yeah.
and should we, instead of being generic about the district designee, should we use D's title? Or appointed person, or should we just be general?
I would advocate for general only
Okay.
because
Things would
In case we
change.
change
things could
something.
change.
Sure, sure. I had one other
Yeah,
consideration.
go ahead. These are good, these are good.
Didn't know if we wanted to have, so we have one policy now for 2 awards. Should there be some, maybe we still have one policy, but do we need to list out different things for each award? I didn't know if we could have one policy to cover both, or if there'd be an advantage to splitting it up to separate policies. I mean, or do you really want it under one policy?
Well, to be really honest about this, I thought really a lot about these two policies, and I thought about the community perception of these two policies. If we were to have only a seal of biliteracy and only a GIAC award, there might be the perception that some students would not qualify for one or the other, when what we're really trying to achieve here is dual certification, that students that are in the seal of biliteracy can also qualify for GIAC, and the kids that are in GIAC can qualify for the seal.
And the
So hence
criteria
one
will be-
policy
yeah.
accomplishes
And
that,
that
yeah.
criteria will be designated elsewhere for each.
Correct. Yep, criteria is designated elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like
good.
that approach.
Barbara?
Dee, what would you say approximately, how many kids would we have? It's probably more than we realize.
It's, yes, probably much more than you realize. Right now, we have about 150 students in each grade level for dual language. So we have 150 of those students, plus we have all of our Gujarati speakers, our Turkish speakers, our Russian speakers, our kids that are in world languages. We have a lot of students. Like, this does not touch every child in our district. In addition to that, I do want to say we have students that are intensively studying engineering and healthcare. We have students that are intentionally studying arts. All of these students are also developing 21st century global skills, for which this is a pathway.
Where will this award be noted, on their transcript or on their diploma and/or both?
Both. We will
Wonderful.
have to invest in a seal that goes onto their diploma,
Wonderful.
as well as the capacity to place language on their transcript.
Is it something, it sounds to me like it's very, very noteworthy, and like we announce certain things at graduation for students that have done an exceptional job. Are there too many students for us to do that at graduation? What do you think?
I would highly suggest that we recognize this. This is a very, becoming nationwide, a very recognizable skill and opportunity for students. I would definitely like to see some kind of either passive recognition, like a colored cord,
Good.
or active recognition. Velasquez Press, which is a publishing company, actually produces the Seal of Biliteracy medals. They look like Olympic gold medals.
Really?
And they have made those medals free to any student who qualifies. So while that's in place, so I do intend to order the medals for our students. In the event that they're not, students will find a way to make themselves known. I just watched a YouTube video last night on students that decorate their graduation cap specifically to let their parents know
Sure. 'Cause
the
it's really-
impact of their
really something to be
choices.
proud of. Well, then you could pass that along to principals as time goes on about
Hmm.
the importance of recognizing those kids on graduation.
And while we don't yet have graduates here in the state of Wisconsin, the state of California has hundreds of them. There are hundreds and hundreds of graduates of all different walks of life who could be Lynn's kids, as much as my kids, as much as Ms. Roddy's kids, everybody's kids. And a lot of these students are able to obtain very high esteem in the community and in their post-secondary choices because of the pathway they've taken. It shows a tremendous amount of ambition and persistence.
Good for future resumes, too,
Absolutely.
big time. we've made some adjustments to what we have here. We can take action, oh, this is not an action item, is it? Yes, it is.
Yes, it
Of
is.
course it is. It's the second time today, Lynn. So we can, with those adjustments, we can take the first-time action on this and then bring it forward as we did the other one.
As amended is somehow.
As amended.
Is somehow,
As amended,
sometimes how
yeah.
people make the motion.
Want to make an action motion?
Sure, I'll do it. I move to accept the recommendation for the District Wisconsin Seal of Biliteracy and Global Education Achievement Certificate as amended.
Seconded by Amanda. Any further questions? I just want a logistical question. How do we assign a number to this? Or when do we assign a number to this?
It would fit under students, under our student section in policy, so it would fall into
You'll
that.
just pick up
that
the next
series. It would pick up and fit in there.
Okay, so that'll happen before the board meeting?
It would still say as potential new policy until it's approved. So we wouldn't have that noted that there would be potential
Okay,
policy
yeah, that would
number
make sense.
3000. But we can also talk then about when this will fit in the book later in our discussion at the
Okay.
meeting.
Other questions? Joe?
More or less a comment, not a question. I kind of view this as a bookend. Our early learners who are learning two languages is the other end of the bookend. That's the other bookend. So now we have something that completes the whole 12, 13 years of education. And I, this has come a long ways, Dee. Thank you for your hard work on this. I really think that this is a spectacular opportunity for students. And I just view this as kind of that closing book, that other bookend that is really there for these students here. So
Good point.
Thank you.
Okay. So you want to do this with an aye or no again, so we don't have to go with the. All in favor of accepting this new policy as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Passes 5-0, thank you. Passes 5-0, thank you.
Yes, it does. Someday
Thank
we'll
you.
teach you to do a roll call.
Thank you, Dee.
Thanks, Dee. Okay. We had just two other discussion items on here I want to bring up, and the first one is on the Neola policies. Well, that's the name of the company, Neola Policy Services.
Correct.
And I'm going to turn it over to Joe at this point.
So for about the last 4 or 5 months,
Since February.
since February, we've talked about just a couple of things. Kind of our process for policy development and then approval through committee to board. We've talked about some of the types of policies that we've been getting, and some of the changes that are happening at the state and federal level that are happening. Going back to February, we did begin the investigation into the Neola Policy Service, which is a company that works in 7 states around the country. Most of them are upper Midwest states. However, they have Florida, and we had one of their representatives at our policy committee to talk a little bit more comprehensively about what the service provides. Basically, Neola, in a nutshell, is it's a policy service where they generate example and template policies for school districts through law firms, so the policies are generated by attorneys. They're presented to school districts on a semi-annual basis so that we get updated policy recommendations. We then, as a district, you as a board, have the opportunity to review those policies and make sure that they're tailored and they fit what is our local need. And then going through what is the policy discussion at committee level, going to the policy discussion at the board, back to committee, and then forward to final approval. We've talked in a variety of levels about why this is important for us. First being policies are backed and guaranteed by attorneys. They're guaranteed by Neola. So should the district be challenged based off of the language in their policy, Neola supports that through their legal, through their attorneys. Now, if there's other things that are associated with that, we need to tap into our lawyers as well. But the policy is legally guaranteed for its position and its accuracy. The second thing is as we've moved forward, and as the board, you've seen this, Sometimes, and we talked about it earlier, we're requesting, here's the policy, we're requesting one reading at the board for final because things have changed and have changed. Some examples of that go back, I believe it was to last October, November when it came to notices. There were some really quick changes that came out of the state legislature that the district had to respond to. Having, Neola as a policy service, their attorneys are attuned to that. They make sure that they're on top of what's happening in the legislature. They're providing those recommendations to schools. So it's really servicing the board, it's servicing the administrators, is to keeping us up to speed. Currently, we do get a variety. One of the administrators is at a conference and attends a legal update. We're presented with some information. We do get a bulletin from the WASB for things to look for. That perhaps you want to investigate this with policy. But again, a lot of the legwork then falls on the district to start, in some instances, from scratch to try to generate a policy to meet what is oftentimes a very complex area. And that, again, is where Neola provides you some benefit. They will give you a couple of options to look at, some things to consider, some things that, just to be very honest, as administrators, if you don't think of when it gets into the legal aspect, sometimes boards don't think of those things when they get into the practical application in a district. So they do a good job of presenting that to us to discuss at a committee, make sure that it fits our needs as a district, and then move through the approval process. So at the last board meeting last week, Neola was approved. We are getting the final component to that from the FNF. Joe, your question was, has this been through lawyers? Yes, went through. They requested that we have the copy of Neola's insurance document, annual insurance document, which is a very minor technicality. So the contract will be signed here shortly. Once we do that, then we submit our entire policy book to Neola for review. At all of the Waukesha policies, series by series, and then we'll compare that to then what is the updated Neola policy book. And they will go through and crosswalk. They will highlight things that are kind of, in essence, boilerplate policies. A non-discrimination policy is non-discrimination. It's grounded in what is the federal expectation for policy. So some of those things are kind of the, if it's a Waukesha policy or if it's a Green Bay policy, really is going to be, in essence, legally the same policy because it has to be in law. They'll also identify some of the more unique Waukesha policies. So perhaps the seal of biliteracy that we just discussed tonight. They'll highlight some policies that tend to require a lot of attention from a board. What is a controversial topic in the classroom, and Barb, you'll remember from the policies from a variety of districts, what could be a controversial topic in the classroom in Waukesha based off of our community values may not necessarily be a controversial topic in Madison, and it may not necessarily be a controversial topic in Denmark, Wisconsin. So, really, it gives us the opportunity to talk about what is and how we're going to treat a controversial topic in our classroom. So we do get full control over what goes in there. And we begin that review process. Richard Zimmon, who was at back, will take us through that. We'll have together an administrative team by area. So, for instance, if it's employment policy, Chris Hedstrom, representatives from the HR office. If it's a business policy, Darren and representatives from the business office. If it's an instructional type, a student policy, principals in the C&I department will come together. Take a look at what is being presented. Take a look at what we currently have in Waukesha, and make sure that everything is in line, so that we're presenting to the committee what we recommend from an administrative standpoint is the most appropriate policy, so that you can review it, give it its treatment. We are talking about a lot of intensive work. I'd say in the next 4, 5, 6 months.
How about a year?
Yeah,
Whole
well,
school year.
and then as we move down that road, then we're getting to a position where, as a committee, there's going to be some homework and everything like that associated with what is being recommended, what is updated, and then really trying to shoot for a date with the full board where we approve the final reviewed and revised policy book. You know, in conversations individually with trying to do a little homework myself, there was a point in time in the district where we reviewed, you know, kind of series by series by series, and we were staying on top of it, you know, to that end. Really, with some of the advances in technology and kind of the speed that these changes are coming to us, having Neola in place is going to just be a very good tool for all of us to make sure that we're compliant with what. And then also how we want to treat things at a local level, like a seal of biliteracy, like controversial topics in the classroom.
I talked to Joe the other day about this. One thing that can be kind of disconcerting, I guess would be a word, is, oh, are we turning this over to them? And the answer is no. We will own these policies, and we're using them for advice and consultation, but we will own these policies. So they don't write them for us. If we want to change a word or two, that's our call. Barbara, you had your hand up?
Yeah, two questions, or one comment, one question. You know, currently, we're not always informed of state law changes and federal law changes, and, you know, sometimes it's hit and miss with us. But now we will be assured that we will be on top of everything mandated by the state and mandated by, at the national level.
Correct. And I'd just add, you know, with the two policy updates that we get a year, those will be formal. So if the government stopped doing everything that the government would do, stopped enacting new laws, for instance, we would still get two updates from Neola. They may be very comprehensive updates, they might be very small. If we do have active legislative sessions, which has been our recent history, we could get an update in October, we could get an update in February, based off of what has happened and what comes to us, and that is a real benefit.
It's not limited to 2 a year.
It's not limited to 2 a year, it does come based off of legislative action.
One more thing, you know, it might be helpful if you'd go over what the costs of this are. You indicated to us in February, and I have a listing here, but do you recall the
Sure, we're
exact
looking at,
costing?
for a full policy book, we're looking at about $8,500, and then for the administrative guidelines and their work, we're looking at another $8,500. Then there's an annual fee of
Right, you're right, 2,700.
that, you know, when you hear that, that does sound like it can sound like a lot of money. Some might think it's not that much. I would add that if we do get into the work with our own individual attorneys, and this is where the cost kind of benefits you. I mean, you start to do a few hours of policy work, and you're starting to approach $1,000 on one policy. The several hundred policies that we have would be reviewed in one fell swoop, covered under that.
Joe?
Yeah, I believe this is cost effective. It frees up your time. We're assured that we have people who are in the industry are looking out for the changes. Freeing up your time is valuable, and Lynn's time too is valuable. Now, Lynn, you've been doing this for years. You know, WASB does send out, hey, you might want to look at this kind of notices, but okay, so should we not? That takes time to determine that. Which ones should we bring forth? That takes time and effort. You had mentioned, you know, consulting our attorneys. We consult our attorneys all the time. So this is, we will be able to better predict our costs in this area now. I think we will be more efficient. And I think overall this is going to help improve things. I kind of view this as almost, you know, we're required by law to have a financial audit every year. I kind of view this as, this is a policy audit. And we've never really done that, besides ourselves. I mean, we try to stay on top of it as best as we can. So I'm really looking forward to actually those initial review of policy. There will come a time where we can decide whether or not we want to move forward with doing this for the guidelines and the updates. I think we should, you know, let's see how this first section, this goes, see how that process works out, see how comfortable we get with their services, and then we can make those decisions a little later.
If I may add just one thing, and this is more out of a convenience for parents, for community members, for board members, as we try to, if we're on the phone together and you're asking me a question about student records and I'm saying, well, now click to, the nice thing about the Neola policy is they host these things online. And so if we're looking at, policy 3150, but it cross-references 4125 and 5521, all of those are going to be hyperlinked right into the pertinent policy. And so really when you get into the functionality for our community, for our teachers, for our administrators, for board members, for parents, it's that much easier than to walk them through this conversation than what we currently have.
Good, Barb?
Yeah, I took some notes back in February when we had Dr. Zimmerman here, and I think it might be, valuable to share it. These people are well-known for policy work across the country. There's 160 school districts in Wisconsin. They've been in the business for 25 years, so they're experienced. They commonly hire retired superintendents who really know, their district's policy inside and out. The attorneys that they will be using are Wisconsin attorneys, and they're familiar with school and municipal laws. So those were and they're based on Wisconsin statutes. So those were the notes that I made, that tell, I think, the credibility, because they work with civil rights, and there's a warranty on the policies. So we can't lose. We can't lose. And we will be at the top of our game. And policy is something we've always taken very seriously on this board, and it's how our district operates. So I see it as extremely valuable, even though there's a cost, but you have to pay for anything that's quality.
And just to add on to that a little bit, Barb, both Superintendent Gray and Barb Brezink offered, as we were putting together, as I was making the decisions on the committees as to who's on what committee and the size of the committees, both Todd and Barb recommended that we should move to a 5-person committee.
Thank you.
There's a large amount of change that is going on. This is really important. One of the major things that a board does is policy.
Yes.
It's one of our major responsibilities. So I think it's really good that we added 2 people, at least for this year. Maybe we'll go back to a 3-person committee after we get through this. Maybe we won't. We'll see how that goes. But there's going to be a pretty busy schedule, I think, Bill.
And
lot of
also,
heavy lifting.
right along the same line, this has been a policy of the policy committee or the board, it's a tremendous starting point for our new board members, because you really get into some of the real roots of what's going on. And I think over the years, we've always had new board members participate in the policy committee as a learning ground, and that's part of it. Joe, what else do we need on this? This is obviously soon we're going to be busy.
Correct. And the next,
Todd's staff, the entire administrative staff, is going to be heavily involved soon.
Correct. In the next week or so, we'll be getting the policy off to Neola along with an electronic copy of our entire policy manual.
And they turn it around and send one back?
They
after
will
they've-
do the crosswalk, and after they've done the crosswalk, we'll begin our meetings.
Any idea time frame?
It usually takes them about a month to turn things
So probably nothing new for this group, at least for another month.
be about a month before we would be reaching out. At that time, we'll be scheduling administrative sessions to work on policy. I will be reaching out to Bill just to make sure that if you are available work sessions, that we could do that. Sessions, perhaps, we could kind of talk about a rotation that would work.
Well, again, that would be an interesting place for Amanda and Greg to get involved in that. And we also know that we have to be a little bit careful about having too many board members in a non-board meeting. So
Correct.
we'll watch that carefully, but yes, we should, I think, have another liaison with your administrative sessions.
And it again, it kind of goes into the process in that
Right.
a policy really starts with the Administrative Policy Committee, and then they either write or recommend, and then it comes to us, correct? Who serves on that committee? You don't have to give names, but
Well, it really
positions.
kind of comes by, it does often go by department. So if there's an update, an instructional update that CNI knows
Okay.
of, they present that to Todd, to me, to
Okay.
Lynn, and then we begin the process of rolling it forward here. If it's a student-type issue or if it's a business issue, it really comes from the appropriate department and through, we gather, what our current process has been is gathering samples from
Yes, other
other
school
school districts, from WASB, consulting with the legal updates that we get from our attorneys, and that begins this. And again, kind of going down to the efficiency of Neola, they're going to present us with what the update is after the board policy book is updated, and then we go.
But we will still refer to our own school district attorney as needed, is that correct?
If we're ever in a situation, we will be, yes,
Okay.
we're not trying to do an entire group buy into the Neola lawyers. While it's gonna be handy and beneficial to us to develop policy, and if we're ever challenged on what that policy says, absolutely, we will
Okay.
go to them. But if it is something that goes beyond with what just the policy says, we would certainly be working with our own attorneys. on
Sure,
this.
thank you.
So,
Oh, excuse me.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
so I'll be just really curious, one of the policies that change on a regular basis, probably the one that changes most frequently, is student rights and responsibilities. I mean, that seems to always be coming up. I'll be kind of curious as to what that templated one looks like. And I think, we're going to find that that's very tailored to us. Maybe not, I don't know, but I'll be curious to sort of see how that comes out. Do you know how do they mark that up saying like, this is what the template is and here's how we migrated your language in so that we can say, their stuff is in blue, but our custom stuff is in red or whatever?
So, to that question, they will provide us with a couple of templates that we can go off of and an opportunity to build into what is Waukesha. So if you talk about student rights and responsibilities and, we're going to build in behaviors, stuff around technology, things like that, those are the additions that we then make from the policy. So we take what is current Waukesha policy and put it in there. Where they're beneficial, for instance, a few months back, we had the athletic directors here talking about the code of conduct and making adjustments to that because there was some information in there, I think, on pagers. Well, nobody walks around with a pager anymore. It was changed to the communication device. So there were some addition or some subtractions to that, and I think they crunched it from about 25 to 20 because things can be captured. So Neola gives us the opportunity to do that. Again, they might present us with some things that we haven't thought of, but we're also at that point able to migrate in where we're at. And we'll also have that conversation about what is the policy piece and then what is the administrative guideline.
Okay.
And while we did say that we were going to hold off on going right into the administrative guideline for it, we might find, say, by the end of July that, we might as well just do it right now because we're noticing in the 3000 series that the policy is this, which gives us flexibility, and the guidelines are this, and this is how we practice in Waukesha. So we may be coming to, the board sooner than we had thought for the administrative guidelines, but again, we'll do so when appropriate.
Greg?
Just one more question, please, Mr.
Greg,
Chairman.
please.
Oh, I'm sorry, Greg.
No, okay. Joe, I was just wanting to know, where does Neola's involvement end? Like when we make revisions to a policy, do they then get back to us on those revisions, or what involvement do they have?
So they'll take us through our entire book out of the gates, all 9, the 1,000 through the 9,000 series of the policy book. They will walk us through the work sessions on how to go about accomplishing what is a draft that's ready for committee. Once those drafts go to committee and get vetted by the committee, and if there's suggestions and corrections here, we take care of those corrections through the Neola rep. And then forward. So say, fast forward a year to when we have a new policy book and we get a policy update from Neola. We go through the process that we have in the district. Administrators take a look at it. We bring it to committee. Committee takes a look at it. Revisions or the full board revisions. Whatever is needed for that particular policy. all of that then is gonna be sent back to Neola, and then they're gonna they're gonna house it and store it for us electronically on our website, so they'll put it on our website for us at that time. So they stay connected with us on an annual basis.
So do they respond to our revisions, one way or the other, if they approve those, or?
If our revision goes through the board as something that we need in this district,
Right.
it is in our policy book then.
Okay.
But I think Greg's got another point. If they're reviewing it before it's been approved, so we've come up with an idea where we're making a change, and do they look at it and say, wait a minute, you're going in the wrong
There's an
direction?
extra fee for that. In the contract, they said they'll look at anything for an extra fee.
Correct. That's the extra fee part.
$125.
And so I've worked in 2 school districts that have used Neola. One was active and had been part of the system for 5 or 6 years, and that was in the 2 schools. And those revisions, when you see the Neola template for a policy, it's general policy language, and then they get very specific with where the district options are, policy language options, and that's really what those templates begin to look like. We can write in what those templates are. If that goes to our board for approval, then it is part of our policy manual. If it's an area where we're stuck, where we have a question, say technology and student records, which, may come up as a thing in the near future that we need to look at, then we have the choice. We use the Neola attorney service to do it, or we send it through Gary and Alana, we've been working.
Okay,
But
Barbara?
we do not lose control of what goes into that.
Right, that was my question.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of, yeah.
Okay, when you quoted the cost, Joe, the $88,550 is the upfront fee. That's just, but thereafter, it will just be $2,700 and then $125 per hour, depending on how much extra time we need. But isn't there 2 annual visits included with that $2,700? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, when you think about this whole thing of stuff going to Neola and back and forth, are we slowing the process more than we're already slow?
I don't think so. I would rather be actively engaged in the discussion around a policy and an update. If this is a policy, if this is something that needs to be changed in November and we hear about it in September, we're gonna do what we need to do as a district to say, let's waive the second reading. Let's make sure that it's on our books at the next board meeting. So we can do that. I would rather be actively engaged in the discussion around policy than not knowing what we don't know. I mean, if there's changes out there that we don't know about and then waiting
yeah.
for something to happen, and then, the first question that Todd and I always get when we call Gary is, well, what does policy say? And then we go forward from there. I'd rather we're in a policy revision and move.
Okay, that's really an update. And I guess the next thing we'll hear is when we start turning this first one over.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, one more item. On the bottom of your agenda, we have other business. One is recommendations for future committee meetings, and one of the things we can include in there is when we would be meeting. We have been meeting, well, theoretically, they've been meeting on the 3rd Tuesday of the month.
theoretically.
Yeah. And I think we're going to be busy enough that we may, and Sue Ettinger would like to have, put it that way, our monthly plan for policy meetings. And I guess the question would be, is the 3rd Tuesday a good day? Is the 3rd Wednesday a good day? We're going to stay away from certain weeks, when we've already got 2 or 3 meetings. So, now, I don't know if you want to answer that question now, or if you want to go over your calendars and figure out whether we could communicate back through Lynn. I have no particular concern.
Well, we need,
Wednesday, 3rd Wednesday would be a little bit better for me than the 3rd Tuesday, but it really is the kind of thing I can manage.
well, let's look at, CNI always meets the first Tuesday,
Yeah, we're going, that's
School
right.
board
I would say we're
meets-
going to stay away from the first 2 weeks.
right, that first 2 weeks. And then what about FNF is the same week as school board meetings? So it's
I
a-
think if we stick to the 3rd or the
To
4th
third-
week, I
yep, the
think,
third
and
week is
3rd
a
is
good week.
probably best if we could.
Yeah, I would like the 3rd week, but,
On a Tuesday, are you saying?
no,
Third Tuesday?
Tuesday, I would go Wednesday or Tuesday, but I don't care.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not that big a
Yeah,
deal.
it's not big deal
If you,
here
if
either.
anybody, does anybody have specific commitments for Wednesdays or Tuesdays? You know, like
Either one works for me.
either one,
So,
either one, either
either
one,
one.
either one? Want to just leave it? Pardon? I prefer Tuesday. Then let's just leave it.
Okay.
And the time?
Is it 6 o'clock good?
Okay. We
What-
previously met at 5 o'clock, and so there's any time that you want to meet, so
6 is better for me.
Like 6, yeah.
fabulous, okay.
Yeah,
Third Tuesday,
You'll communicate this with Sue?
yes.
6 o'clock.
That's it? Anything else that's needed? Joe?
Calendar of work that this committee may need to do, just to kind of look out ahead. We may want to consider, policy meeting on the third Tuesday, but just to keep in the back of our minds that we might need a policy meeting on the fourth Tuesday as well. Or, given what you're going to be looking at, what's going to need to be reviewed. We can kind of look at it as a couple 5K runs or, one full marathon on a Tuesday night.
No.
I plant that seed, just
that.
defer to you as to what it is that you.
I think we understand that there's a lot coming up.
Oh, there's a lot of work. A whole
And
book.
that's good. Okay, with that, we would be adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.